5 girls born to America's most elite dynasty. Beneath the glamorous gowns and presidential banquets, this clan concealed dark truths for dozens of years. A single sibling vanished for more than 20 years, with her own brothers and sisters having absolutely no clue where she went. A second rebelled against their mom and perished in a plane crash above France at age 28. The remaining girls shouldered heavy weights that forever altered their destinies. Here is the untold saga of Rosemary, Kathleen, Eunice, Patricia, and Jean Kennedy. These women shifted culture in manners their influential male siblings simply couldn't match. The ultimate American dynasty. Back in the 1920s and 30s, the family's Hyannisport estate in Massachusetts acted as a playground where 9 kids roamed freely over the grass, navigated the coastal waters, and battled intensely in every possible activity, ranging from backyard gridiron matches to heated arguments over meals. Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. and his wife, Rose Fitzgerald, managed to build something truly exceptional. A household that outwardly possessed everything imaginable. The patriarch earned massive wealth from scratch, amassing riches by investing in financial institutions, property markets, and movie-making. President Franklin D. Roosevelt named him the premier head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and later, he took charge of the Maritime Commission. By 1938, he secured the role of United States Ambassador to Great Britain, moving his whole brood to London during a completely defining era for the modern world. His wife similarly hailed from an elite civic background. Her dad, famously known as John Honey Fitzgerald, worked as Boston's mayor and sat in Congress. The matriarch completely understood the demands of a high-profile life, always keeping up a flawless image and refusing to show the public a single flaw. An incredibly religious woman, she went to church every single day and brought up her kids with rigid Catholic values. This intense spirituality acted as a powerful anchor, yet it also built an emotional wall separating her from a few of the girls. As a couple, they welcomed 9 babies from 1915 to 1932. Joseph Jr. arrived initially, with John trailing behind in 1917. Next up, on September 13, 1918, their oldest girl made her debut. The whole clan simply referred to her as Rosemary. Her delivery faced severe complications. Right in the middle of the massive Spanish flu outbreak, the attending physician ran late. Sticking to standard medical practices of that era, the midwife instructed the mother to squeeze her legs shut, trapping the infant's head inside the birth canal for 2 hours. That terrible call completely derailed the newborn's future, even if no one grasped it immediately. Initially, the parents felt pretty calm about things, since their new infant looked perfectly fine and robust. It took her a bit longer to start scooting, stepping, and talking compared to her older male siblings, yet kids often hit milestones at varying speeds. Her mom dragged her to numerous physicians, hunted down top medical experts, and experimented with unique teaching methods. The patriarch funded personal instructors and exclusive academies, anything to assist his little girl in keeping pace with the rest of the pack. The whole household only realized the true extent of her delays once the second girl was brought into the world. Kathleen Agnes Kennedy entered the picture on February 20th, 1920. Small, fair-haired, and absolutely radiating liveliness from day one, her dad affectionately dubbed her Kick, thanks to her completely unstoppable vibe. This little firecracker became his absolute pride and joy, effortlessly bringing a smile to his face, bonding over a mutual, quick sense of humor and zest for living. While the eldest sister fought to communicate, the younger sibling's snappy comebacks and brilliant quips turned into a household legend. Next in line was Eunice Mary on July 10, 1921. She acted far more reserved and thoughtful compared to Kick, yet packed an incredibly sharp mind and relentless grit that eventually pushed her far. From a young age, she connected deeply with her oldest sister. The pair constantly engaged in athletics, splashing around and boating right next to each other, with Eunice never once acting like her sibling was inadequate. She made sure to involve her, hyped her up, and shielded her from the mean-spirited behavior of ignorant outsiders. Patricia Helen joined the crew on May 6, 1924. Possessing a highly creative spirit, she gravitated toward the stage and cinema from childhood. Viewing motion pictures left her utterly mesmerized, sparking lifelong fantasies about snagging a job out in Los Angeles. Then came the final girl, Jean Ann, making her debut on February 20th, 1928, conveniently celebrating her special day alongside Kik. Being the youngest female in the group, Jean spent her time observing and soaking up lessons from her older siblings. Sandwiched around these daughters were a trio of extra sons, including Robert in 1925 and Edward in 1932, rounding out the massive clan. These kids matured in an environment drenched in massive wealth. However, the patriarch expected nothing short of absolute perfection from every single one. Securing a victory wasn't a suggestion, it was a hardcore requirement. Taking the runner-up spot equaled a total loss. While eating supper, the siblings argued over breaking news, tested one another's brainpower, and fought hard to win their dad's praise and focus. The old man celebrated triumph and completely ignored defeat. That intense drive to win ultimately pushed a few toward incredible achievements, while forcing the rest into drastic actions. Still, joyful times definitely existed. The whole gang loved taking the boats out around the Cape Cod waters when the weather got warm, wasting away endless sunny afternoons out on the ocean. They went to elite academies, toured overseas, and mingled with top-tier politicians and diplomats. Their mom rigorously ensured they picked up foreign tongues, dug into the past, and appreciated fine arts. She constantly dragged the bunch to historical exhibits and live symphonies. Her ultimate goal was shaping them into well-rounded individuals rather than just another group of rich, privileged kids. For the Kennedy daughters, life meant walking a tightrope between their dad's relentless drive for success and their mom's strict religious morals. The boys, however, got a green light to act ruthless, driven, and dominant. Daughters had to walk a fine line. Talented, yet humble, charismatic without being pushy, and smart, while always letting men take the lead. Then came the vanishing of their sister. Growing up, the glaring differences separating her from the rest of the pack became an elephant in the room. Even with a fortune spent on elite personal coaches, she floundered in class, while her siblings easily aced their courses. Her sister Kik easily won crowds over using sharp banter, but her own chats stayed basic, constantly fighting to articulate herself. The guys went all out on the field, whereas she fell behind in agility. Even so, she tried her absolute hardest to join in. Penning her daily life in a journal, she jotted down notes about new acquaintances, formal balls, and musical shows. Though her writing lacked complexity, it brimmed with genuine emotion, showcasing a young adult figuring out her surroundings. She still jumped into backyard games alongside her siblings, regardless of whether she could match their cutthroat drive. Tagging along on family trips and fancy gatherings, she desperately attempted to fit the exact mold her folks built. Her mother worked herself to the bone trying to fix things, throwing cash at top-tier educators and dragging her to medical experts everywhere. Bouncing her from one academy to the next, her mom crossed her fingers that some place might finally help her blossom. Pouring endless funds into the problem, her dad held on to the belief that cash and hard work could cure her. Back in 1938, her dad landed the British ambassador gig, so she packed up and headed across the pond. This foreign capital offered a clean slate, since nobody knew their household drama. Her folks signed her up at a religious academy featuring a specialized Montessori track. Miraculously, she absolutely blossomed there like never before. The sisters running the place genuinely grasped exactly what made her tick. Nobody forced her into a rat race against kids who absorbed information faster. Instead of harping on her roadblocks, teachers cheered every little victory. They built a highly predictable routine, offering daily comfort. For the first time, she discovered genuine happiness, true peace and a real feeling of finally fitting in. During her grand debut night, she posted up right next to her mom and sister before King George VI and Queen Elizabeth inside Buckingham Palace. After drilling that tricky royal bow endlessly, she desperately wanted to nail it. But when the spotlight hit, nerves fried her, causing a near tumble. Onlookers didn't bat an eye, while the monarchs just grinned like everything went off without a hitch. Her mother completely wiped the slip-up from her memory going forward, acting like the premiere was flawless, absolutely shutting down any talk of a mistake. Just for a fleeting second across the pond, she felt practically identical to her sisters, hitting up formal galas, mingling with peers, and diving headfirst into the high society scene attached to the ambassador lifestyle. However, once World War II kicked off in September 1939, the whole crew fled back to America for safety. She was forced to ditch the campus bringing her joy, walking away from a rare safe haven filled with warm acceptance. Returning stateside at 21, she grew completely fed up with the strict boundaries ruling her everyday life. It blew her mind that Kik and Eunice flew solo. How come she couldn't go to parties alone? Why the constant babysitting? Being the odd one out ate her alive, sparking wild rebellions that thoroughly spooked her folks. Breaking curfew became normal as she ditched her minders under darkness. Nobody could guess her next move. You might get a perfectly angelic girl one afternoon, only to face screaming matches or physical outbursts the next. Her emotional roller coaster went completely off the tracks, leaving the household helpless. Her dad stressed out constantly. His panic had nothing to do with her actual happiness. He dreaded scandalous gossip instead. What if she ended up pregnant? Suppose she spilled some crazy talk to the press? What if her antics dragged their name through the mud, torpedoing his boy's government dreams? God forbid everyday folks figured out their picture-perfect household was a total sham. In 1941, her father caught wind of prefrontal lobotomies. Surgeons had been testing it out on folks battling psychological demons, bragging about absolute game-changing outcomes. Medical pros swore it would chill out crazy tempers, dial down stress, and turn absolute nightmares into total pushovers. A huge chunk of the medical crowd hyped it as a magic bullet for issues previously deemed completely hopeless. The patriarch didn't even bother running the idea past his wife beforehand. He kept the other kids completely in the dark, never pausing to wonder if his daughter actually consented to this massive surgery. He just signed the paperwork, entirely convinced this operation would instantly fix his problem child. At just 23 years of age, she underwent that severe brain surgery back in November 1941. Medical staff literally sliced into her skull while she stayed wide awake, making her chant hymns and belt out tunes to gauge reactions as they severed connections. Those doctors kept right on hacking away until she stopped making sense. Her speech devolved into pure gibberish, and she completely failed to answer anything. That horrific operation severely handicapped the young woman for good. Walking alone became impossible, her stride ruined for good. Talking clearly went out the window, leaving her with only garbled, broken sentences. Her arm hung paralyzed, the fine motor skills she had spent years building entirely ruined. That lively girl who wrote in journals, partied late, and took boats out with her brothers and sisters, vanished. Swapped out for a person requiring round-the-clock supervision for the rest of her days. Joseph made immediate plans to ship Rosemary off to St. Coletta, a residential facility. Located in Jefferson, Wisconsin, over 800 miles away from their sprawling Massachusetts estate. He constructed an exclusive cabin roughly 1 mile off the central grounds, guaranteeing she stayed completely isolated from fellow patients. A pair of Catholic nuns, Sister Margaret Ann and Sister Leona, took charge of her alongside a shifting crew of aides. Afterward, Joseph pulled a stunt way worse than the actual lobotomy. He informed his relatives that Rosemary packed up to become a special education teacher at an academy somewhere in Wisconsin. He totally banned anyone from visiting or even asking questions about her new location. Talking about Rosemary turned totally off limits inside the Kennedy home. For 20 whole years, Rose Kennedy never laid eyes on her kid. She never visited Wisconsin. She didn't even ask to get Rosemary on the phone. She swallowed Joseph's excuses and followed his strict no-contact rule, putting her duties as a submissive spouse way ahead of motherhood. The rest of the Kennedy siblings stayed clueless about their sister's location or physical state. They got ordered to zip it, and they listened. Once the siblings ultimately uncovered the reality way later, right after their dad had a severe stroke in 1961 that wrecked his authority, they felt completely sickened. Jack, Bobby, and Ted, guys who staked their reputations on empathy and duty, realized they had basically deserted their sister. Eunice, Patricia, and Jean recognized that while they were out living it up, tying the knot, and starting families, Rosemary was stuck solo in Wisconsin, powerless to speak up, not even capable of questioning why her folks dumped her. That heavy guilt ate at all of them until their dying days. But at that point, the devastation was permanent. Rosemary ended up doing 60 years in a facility, stashed away from the relatives who blew it by not shielding her from their dad's horrific choice, kicking off Kick's rebellion. While Rosemary rotted in complete isolation out in Wisconsin, off the grid to her loved ones, her little sister Kick blossomed into London's absolute favorite American export. Upon the family's initial landing in England back in 1938, 18-year-old Kathleen Kennedy totally blew British high society away. She scored the title of Debutante of the Year, a massive nod to both her gorgeous looks and incredibly magnetic charm. Kick had a serious knack for putting everyone at ease. She dubbed the Duke of Marlborough Dookie Wookie and chomped on gum while strolling through London, moves that should have pissed off the royals, yet, miraculously, won them over. Her casual American vibe felt incredibly refreshing in a world locked down by stuffy traditions. She was hilarious, a little cheeky, super welcoming, and authentically herself in a style those British elites had never witnessed. During a bash, she bumped into William Cavendish, the Marquess of Hartington, next in line for Duke of Devonshire and a majorly sought-after British bachelor. His folks owned Chatsworth House, easily among England's most epic mansions, plus massive plots nationwide. Hitching her wagon to Billy meant Kick was Duchess-bound. Billy leaned pretty timid next to Kick's wild energy, playing it safe and old school. But they fell head over heels anyway, maybe even thanks to those total opposites. Billy really dug Kick's fierce independence. She melted his stiff outer shell and cracked him up like nobody's business. However, they hit one massive, seemingly impossible roadblock along the way. Billy grew up Protestant, and the Cavendish crew held firm boundaries. Any kids popping out of this union needed to grow up Anglican. Absolutely zero Catholicism allowed. For the Kennedy clan, this went way beyond some simple church preference. It was a complete betrayal of every single thing they stood for. Rose Kennedy dug her heels in especially hard. She viewed the whole romance as Kick trading her eternal salvation for some fancy societal clout. Marrying outside the Catholic Church guaranteed an instant excommunication. It meant being totally barred from the holy sacraments. For Rose, a hardcore traditionalist who took her faith dead seriously, the mere thought of her kid entertaining a wedding like that was totally mind-blowing. Rose pulled every trick in the book to bust them up. She rigged social events just to keep Kick miles from Billy, stalling any wedding talk indefinitely. She drew a hard line, making it obvious that chasing Billy meant kissing her own family goodbye. But once World War II kicked off, back in September 1939, and the Kennedys shipped back stateside, Kick couldn't stop obsessing over Billy and her old English life. She mailed letters and kept daydreaming about heading back. She took a shot at dating local guys around America, but absolutely zero dudes held a candle to the guy waiting across the pond. Sometime in 1943, Kick scored her ticket back to England. Volunteering for the Red Cross to run a soldier hangout in London handed her the perfect alibi to jet back and reconnect with Billy. Throughout those wartime years, Completely free from her mom's overbearing grip and endless nagging, Kik stood on her own 2 feet, totally zeroing in on her goals. Her Red Cross gig actually mattered. She threw together events for homesick troops, offering solid comfort and friendly banter to guys facing pure wartime hell. That hustle handed her real purpose outside her fancy background, yet it still steered her right back into Billy's arms. Their romance resumed, complicated by war and family drama, but packing an absolutely undeniable, fiery spark. Kathleen Kennedy and William Cavendish, the Marquess of Hartington, tied the knot during a civil service at London's Caxton Hall Registry on May 6, 1944. By skipping a traditional Catholic wedding, Kik basically got herself banished from her childhood faith. Joseph Jr., her eldest sibling stationed in the United Kingdom with the United States Navy, was the sole relative present. Acting as their best man, Joe went directly against their folks' wishes to back his sister. John, the next brother in line, missed it due to hospital confinement following his patrol torpedo boat's destruction overseas. The bride's parents completely boycotted the event, and Rose flat-out ignored her daughter's calls. Their honeymoon phase vanished under 5 weeks later when Billy got deployed to the French front. Billy shipped out to combat on June 13, 1944, barely 4 weeks post-wedding, while Kik fought hard to keep hoping for his safe return. Tragically, a German sharpshooter took William Cavendish's life while he commanded troops near Heppen, Belgium on September 10, 1944. Kik became a widow at 24. After alienating her relatives, losing her religion, and wedding her soulmate, he was gone within 4 short months. 3 months prior, Kik endured another utterly soul-crushing family tragedy. Joseph Jr. perished on August 12, 1944, when his aircraft blew up above the English Channel mid-mission. Her ultimate family ally, the brother who boldly defied their folks to stand beside her at the altar, was suddenly gone forever. The massive blast completely erased Joe, leaving 0 remains to bury as he vanished into the ocean. Staying behind in the United Kingdom amidst her mourning, she pushed forward with her American Red Cross duties to rebuild. The Cavendish clan surprisingly embraced her, even though a Catholic American girl was hardly their ideal aristocratic match. Overcoming massive mutual family objections, the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire warmly accepted the woman who completely stole their son's heart. Holding the title Marchioness of Hartington brought high societal status and noble respect, yet intense isolation haunted her without her late husband. With her beloved sibling deceased, her relatives across the Atlantic gave her the silent treatment. Rose held on to her bitter grudge. Then, in 1946, Kik crossed paths with Peter Fitzwilliam, the 8th Earl Fitzwilliam. He possessed a completely different vibe than Billy. Fearless, wildly charismatic, adventurous, and slightly unhinged. Boasting riches that eclipsed even the Cavendish fortune, he enjoyed sprawling properties and endless extravagance. His undeniable charm brought joy back into her dark world when smiling felt impossible. Though he was, technically, still hitched while navigating a complex divorce. Once again, she tumbled head over heels for a guy who would absolutely infuriate her mom. Tying the knot with a Protestant caused a huge scandal, but dating a married dude was an absolute nightmare. News of this scandalous romance thoroughly disgusted Rose Kennedy, prompting a barrage of angry letters declaring it the absolute last straw. Total excommunication awaited her, along with severed bank accounts and the loss of her entire livelihood. Her mom threatened absolute isolation if the affair continued, but Kik was entirely past caring about her mother's opinions. The church had already kicked her out, and she had successfully weathered her parents' wrath once before. Having buried a spouse and sibling from combat, she refused to sacrifice her joy merely to appease her mother's strict standards. Getting her dad's green light mattered, however, since Joseph usually leaned toward practical thinking rather than strict spiritual rules. Hearing about his May 1948 trip to Paris, she planned a meetup there to discuss Peter and seek basic sympathy from him, even if he wouldn't offer full endorsement. Kik and Lord Fitzwilliam hopped on a de Havilland Dove plane at Toussaint-le-Noble Airport on May 13, 1948, aiming for a quick French Riviera getaway before her sit-down. Flown by Peter Townsend alongside navigator Arthur Freeman, the four-person flight departed at 3:30 that afternoon into an overcast sky. Roughly 60 minutes airborne, the aircraft hit a brutal weather front outside Vienne, France. Heavy turbulence battered them for 20 straight minutes, violently throwing the ship through zero-visibility fog until their ground communications completely died out. Navigating blind, without proper dials to confirm their heading, the crew became dangerously disoriented. Emerging from the heavy overcast, the men up front suddenly realized they were plummeting nose first toward the earth. Yanking the yokes violently back to flatten out, the sheer aerodynamic force of leveling off at such velocity ripped the aircraft to pieces. A single wing sheared away instantly, followed closely by the dual motors and the entire tail structure. Tumbling uncontrollably into a steep Ardèche region ravine near Saint-Beauzille's Plateau de Quiron, Kathleen Kennedy Cavendish, the Marchioness of Hartington, perished instantly upon crashing. Peter Fitzwilliam and both aviators also suffered immediate fatalities. She had just turned 28. Joseph Kennedy crossed the pond for his little girl's British memorial service. Laid to rest at St. Peter's Churchyard in Edensor, her beautiful grave sits beside Chatsworth House, the very Cavendish estate she'd have ruled alongside Billy. Refusing to show up for the burial, Rose admitted herself to a clinic for vague health issues, holding her bitter grudge into eternity. That rift between the two of them never fully healed. Not once did her mom admit her girl's choice to chase true romance mattered more than strict church rules. Decades down the line, she framed her child's passing as a total heartbreak, yet completely ignored how she actively worsened those brief years. Her in-laws picked a headstone stating she spread pure joy, and ultimately found it herself. That quote perfectly captured someone spreading sunshine constantly, despite enduring hurdles from her relatives. Now came her sister's crusade. Losing two older siblings in just 4 years completely shattered their entire household. Yet the pain cut way worse for Eunice, since she secretly shouldered the crushing reality of her oldest sister's fate. Sometime during the early 1950s, she discovered the gruesome details regarding the brain surgery her dad ordered and her siblings' actual whereabouts. That completely flipped her worldview. She eventually married Robert Sargent Shriver, Jr. on May 23, 1953. Her new husband hailed from a prestigious East Coast clan and boasted an incredibly impressive resume himself. He eventually took charge of the brand new Peace Corps for his brother-in-law, before heading overseas to represent America in Paris. The couple raised 5 kids, among them a future famous television reporter who ended up marrying a massive Hollywood action star. However, her real purpose became undeniably clear in 1957, upon taking charge at her late brother's Memorial Foundation. This philanthropic group existed simply to honor their oldest sibling's legacy. With her calling the shots, the entire organization experienced an absolutely massive overhaul. She pivoted right away from standard church donations toward funding clinical studies on mental handicaps and improving patient care. Back throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, society pretty much pretended folks with cognitive delays were invisible. Doctors typically locked them away in asylums where relatives abandoned them, stripping away any chance at schooling or real purpose. These individuals essentially got stored in massive buildings offering only the barest supervision. The general public treated them like second-class citizens, viewing them either as pathetic charity cases or outright repulsive burdens. Eunice personally lived through the fallout of hiding a special needs relative in the shadows. By the 1960s, she started dropping by to see her sibling, doing so while their dad was alive, fiercely committed to rebuilding a bond with the sister snatched away long ago. Once the patriarch endured a massive brain bleed in 1961 that completely sidelined him, relatives started visiting the facility way more often. Following his passing in 1969, every single hurdle keeping them from seeing her vanished for good. She observed her sister struggling with a constant shuffle and mumbling phrases lacking any real logic or coherence, stuck in a Midwestern group home requiring constant 24-hour supervision. The poor woman could never recover her stolen spark. That horrific brain injury was permanent. Still, her little sister hoped she could somehow stop this exact nightmare from destroying other households. By 1962, she launched a rural outdoor program on her East Coast property for special needs folks, naming the project after her husband. The main objective sounded incredibly basic. Just figure out their athletic capabilities, instead of constantly obsessing over their medical diagnoses. Stop obsessing over their perceived flaws and start cheering for their actual talents. Everyone attending blossomed in ways nobody ever predicted. They ran track, did field events, and massively leveled up their motor skills. These participants unlocked hidden talents that absolutely shocked everyone, especially the parents who never thought it possible. Given a real shot, they goofed around, had a blast, and tested their absolute limits, just like regular kids do. Watching this, she realized that offering them a fair shot, plenty of cheering, and the right backing, empowered these misunderstood individuals to shatter public expectations. The actual issue never stemmed from their personal handicaps. The real tragedy was a culture actively denying them a chance to shine. That program exploded annually, drawing massive crowds of new athletes and helpers. Teaming up with Chicago park official Anne McLoone Burke in 1968, she massively scaled the concept up, hosting the premier global tournament at Soldier Field on July 20th. About 1,000 North American competitors showed up to battle it out during the one-day event. Olympic track legend Rayford Johnson even stepped in to offer guidance. Kickoff festivities included a teenager running with a literal torch to ignite a 45-foot memorial fire, paying tribute to the slain president she lost 5 years prior. They hosted over 200 unique competitions, featuring track sprints, aquatic sports, ball tossing, and high jumps. Every participant left it all on the field, motivated entirely by a burning desire to win rather than being held back by their struggles. While addressing the massive crowd at the inaugural event, she delivered a powerful message that absolutely stood the test of time. She declared the Midwest tournament confirmed one massive truth. Kids dealing with mental handicaps can absolutely turn into elite sports stars. By getting out on the field, they finally unlock their true capacity to thrive. The pledge Eunice brought to that inaugural event turned legendary, perfectly embodying what the cause was all about. Allow me to achieve victory, yet should I fall short, let my effort be courageous. The program expanded globally far quicker than anyone ever thought possible. Throughout the 1970s, competitions spanned the globe. Come the 1980s, millions competed. This initiative offered more than mere sports, delivering medical checkups, chances GDK mingle, and a stage where GDK facing cognitive challenges proved their immense societal worth. During 1984, Ronald Reagan presented Eunice with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, GDK, America's premier civilian award, acknowledging her tireless advocacy for the intellectually challenged. Fast forward to 2008, honoring her profound influence, officials rebranded the Federal Child Health Agency as the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. Eunice passed away peacefully with relatives nearby on August 11, 2009, at 88. Rosemary died 4 years prior, leaving this world on January 7, 2005, aged 86. During Rosemary's final moments, Eunice, Patricia, Jean, and their brother Ted stayed close. They dedicated decades to ensuring she would absolutely never face isolation or obscurity anymore. The family patriarch's intended dark secret, a topic he desperately wanted buried and silenced, ultimately sparked Eunice's lifelong mission. By turning her relative's most guarded tragedy around, she built an enduring movement that revolutionized global attitudes toward cognitive impairments. Her efforts demonstrated that impairments never erase value, showing that every person merits respect, open doors, and room to thrive. Next up, Patricia's Hollywood era. As the sixth child born to Joe and Rose, Patricia pursued a completely distinct route from her government-focused male siblings. Throughout her youth, she fantasized about producing movies, an industry that notoriously kept women out during the 1940s and 50s. She tied the knot with English star Peter Lawford on April 24, 1954, inside Manhattan's Church of St. Thomas More. Lawford gained serious fame by running alongside Frank Sinatra's iconic Rat Pack, the legendary entertainment crew that literally invented swagger across the late 1950s and early 1960s. Saying "I do" thrust Patricia straight into Tinseltown's elite. Her brother John partied with the couple's circle, mingling alongside Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe. Their lavish residence morphed into a vibrant hub, seamlessly blending Washington politics with showbiz glamour. Together, the pair welcomed 4 kids. Christopher arrived in 1955, Sydney in 1956, Victoria in 1958, and Robin in 1961. They resembled pure Hollywood royalty. Behind closed doors, their relationship faltered due to Peter's severe addictions. Juggling the massive expectations of a powerful political dynasty while navigating the ruthless movie business ultimately broke them down. Barely breathing past the president's 1963 assassination, the couple split up, eventually finalizing their divorce by 1966. Relocating to the East Coast, she quietly abandoned those early cinematic dreams she once fiercely aimed to chase. Hollywood's missed opportunity hugely benefited the cultural sector, as she launched a national literary committee that organized speaker series and funded grants. Battling pneumonia, she passed away at 82 on September 17, 2006. Her long life allowed her to watch Eunice accept that prestigious presidential honor, to witness her sibling Ted dedicate roughly 50 years to the United States Senate, and to observe her family evolve from an untouchable empire into a beautifully flawed, grounded reality. Let's cover Jean's ambassadorial run. Born exactly 8 years after Kick, on February 20, 1928, Jean Ann stood as the baby of the sisterhood. Her childhood involved quietly observing the older girls juggle immense familial pressure, absorbing crucial lessons from their victories and heartbreaks alike. She married Stephen Edward Smith on May 19, 1956. The couple raised 4 kids, actively seeking a much quieter existence than her famous siblings, even though Jean frequently rolled up her sleeves for her brother's campaign trails. Yet her truly defining legacy blossomed during her twilight years. Similar to Eunice, her sister Rosemary's tragic fate deeply inspired her. Back in 1974, she established Very Special Arts, a nonprofit geared toward empowering disabled individuals through creative expression. She crisscrossed the globe, passionately pushing for broader acceptance within cultural and artistic spaces. Her initiative blossomed into a massive worldwide network, delivering educational tools and imaginative outlets to countless individuals facing physical or cognitive barriers. Their core philosophy stressed that imagination laughs at bodily or mental limitations, proving that painting, melodies, and stages are universally accessible. Bill Clinton selected Jean to serve as the 25th American ambassador to Ireland back in 1993. That assignment felt perfectly tailored for someone boasting deep Irish-American political roots. She held the position until 1998, working to fortify the alliance between America and Ireland amid highly critical peace talks happening across northern EJK. Barack Obama bestowed the Presidential Medal of Freedom upon her in 2011, recognizing her spectacular arts advocacy. She sported the badge with the same fierce pride Eunice once did. Out of all the siblings, Jean Kennedy Smith lived the longest. Reaching 92, she passed away on June 17, 2020. Surviving her 8 brothers and sisters, she single-handedly carried the family's torch right to the finish line. What gets left behind carries heavy meaning. These 5 women started their journeys inside America's most fiercely influential dynasty. Dad's cash flowed freely, and dropping their famous surname instantly cleared any hurdle. Yet, that elite status carried a massive hidden toll behind closed doors. Rosemary sat locked in facilities for over 60 years, since her dad prioritized his perfect public image above her health. That surgery, originally designed to quiet her down, ultimately robbed her of the basic ability to talk or move normally ever again. Banned from seeing her, the other kids never even got to bid farewell to the vibrant girl they loved before that disastrous lobotomy ruined everything. Following her heart, Kik wed twice, only to face bitter backlash from a mom who put strict church rules ahead of her kids' joy. Passing away at 28, she was still desperately seeking her dad's blessing for personal life decisions that were entirely hers to begin with. Eunice, Patricia, and Jean all grew old, yet they constantly hauled around the heavy emotional baggage of their siblings' tragic fates. Seeing the sisters each handled the devastating heartbreak in unique ways. Eunice poured her sorrow into launching the Special Olympics, opening massive new doors for millions living with cognitive challenges. Jean started very special arts, ensuring physical or mental limits wouldn't ever hold back artistic passion. Ditching the Hollywood spotlight, Patricia carved out a low-key existence focused on boosting schools. Together, they showed the world their family name meant way more than just typical government jobs. It meant spotting deep unfairness and fighting to fix it. Their true impact lay in flipping private agony into massive wins for the public. Sure, Rosemary never started charities, stepped up to a podium, or won flashy awards. Yet the horrific treatment she endured fired up her siblings to vigorously defend the most vulnerable. Every single one of those major programs, from the Special Olympics and Very Special Arts to the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute, owes its very creation to Rosemary's tragic story. At her passing in 2005, Eunice, Patricia, Jean, and Ted surrounded her bed. For decades, they relentlessly worked to ensure she'd never feel abandoned or completely overlooked again. After Dad passed away, they dropped by constantly and made sure she attended every holiday. They finally welcomed her back into the fold she was cruelly ripped from. Unsurprisingly, they had flaws. After all, they grew up where coming in first was everything, and looking good always beat facts. Yet, they learned from the blunders that ruined their sibling. Using their elite status, they flipped deep heartache into a powerful drive to uplift others. Honestly, that might just be the family's absolute greatest lasting impact. It isn't about the White House, Congress gigs, or fancy diplomat titles. It's the massive push Eunice and Jean made for the disabled community. They totally rewired how the public looks at and interacts with folks who used to be shoved aside and ignored. These women prove that having a silver spoon won't give you a free pass from severe heartbreak. Wealth won't shield you from toxic household skeletons, brutal decisions, or crushing grief. However, it absolutely hands you the cash and megaphone to spark real progress, assuming you step up. Eunice and Jean honored their sister by actively fighting for folks in her situation. They kept Kik's spirit alive by living completely unrestrained, outright refusing to let their mom's harsh judgments steer their paths. They consciously decided to spin catastrophe into lasting purpose. Ultimately, these women achieved a massive feat their celebrated brothers simply couldn't touch. Yanking the clan's ugliest skeleton straight out of the closet, they owned up to horrific past mistakes and hustled hard to stop anyone else from suffering the exact same fate. They proved genuine clout isn't about winning elections, scoring fancy titles, or snagging government desks. Actual strength comes from taking whatever leverage you've got and utilizing it to drastically improve life for the most vulnerable crowds. That's the lasting mark Rosemary, Kathleen, Eunice, Patricia, and Jean truly stamped onto history. It's not about being flawless. It's a story of bouncing back, making amends, and facing brutal realities head-on. If this breakdown hooked you, hit that like button and subscribe right now to catch all our upcoming deep dives.